Captain Jack Morrison stood at the window of his ship's bridge, watching the enemy fleet move closer through the darkness of space. The alien ships looked like giant bugs made of metal and flesh, their green lights pulsing like sick heartbeats. There were so many of them that they covered the stars like a dark cloud. Jack counted them again, hoping he had made a mistake. 137 enemy ships against his 12. The math was simple and terrible. Earth's entire defense. Fleet had been reduced to these last few vessels, and they were all that stood between humanity and total destruction. "Sir, the aliens are sending us a message," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the fear underneath. They had all seen what happened to the other worlds that had tried to fight the Zephyrians. Nothing was left but empty planets and silence. Jack turned away from the window and looked at his bridge crew. These men and women had followed him through 3 years of the bloodiest war humanity had ever fought. They had seen their friends die, their homes destroyed, and their hope crushed over and over again. But they were still here, still fighting. Still believing that somehow they could win. Commander Lisa Parker stood at his right side, her computer screen showing the enemy formation. She had been with him since the beginning, when they thought this war would be over in months. Now she was the closest thing to family he had left. Chief Engineer Bobby Kane sat at his station, his hands dancing over the controls as he tried to keep their damaged ship running. The Liberty had taken a beating in the last battle, but Bobby had somehow kept her flying. "What do they want?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. "They want us to surrender," Amy replied. "They say if we give up now, they will let." "Some humans live as slaves," Jack almost laughed. The Zephyrians had been saying the same thing for 3 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy, and every time they offered the same deal. Surrender and live as slaves, or fight and die. Most species had chosen slavery. Only humans had chosen to keep fighting. "Tell them we have an answer," Jack said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Tell them that humans do not surrender. Tell them that today they learn what happens when they mess with Earth." Lieutenant Danny Ross at the pilot's seat grinned. Despite the situation, "Should I warm up the engines, sir?" "Not yet," Jack replied. "Let me talk to the fleet first." Jack pressed the button that would send his voice to all the remaining ships. The USS Defiance, commanded by his old friend Captain Steve Adams, the USS Valor, under Captain Nancy Young, who had lost her husband in the Battle of Mars, the destroyers. Hawk, Eagle, and Raven, each carrying crews who had volunteered for this final mission. The support ships that had somehow survived when bigger vessels had been destroyed. "This is Captain Morrison," he began. "I know you are all scared. I know you are all tired. I know you want to go home to your families and forget this war ever happened. But we cannot go home. There is no home to go to unless we stop these aliens here and now." He paused, looking out at the enemy fleet. "The Zephyrians think they know us. They think we are just another weak species that will break under pressure. They have studied our history, our wars, our weapons. They know we are not as advanced as they are. They know we do not have their technology or their numbers." The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the computers. Jack could feel his crew listening, not just to his words, but to his tone, his confidence, his belief. "But there is something they do not know about humans," Jack continued. "Something they cannot understand because they have never felt it themselves. We do not know when to quit. We do not know how to give up. When any reasonable species would surrender, we keep fighting. When the odds are impossible, we find a way to make them work." He thought about Admiral Frank Murphy, who had died holding the line at Mars, about Colonel Janet Hill, who had sacrificed her entire battalion to buy time for the evacuation of Luna Colony. About the millions of humans who had died rather than live as slaves. "They expect us to break," Jack said. "They expect us to run. They expect us to beg for mercy. Instead, we are going to show them what humans are really made of. We are going to make them pay for every ship they destroy, every life they take. We are going to make them remember this day for the rest of their existence." On the screen, the alien fleet was moving into attack formation. The bioships were beautiful in their own terrible way, like living creatures that had been turned into weapons. They pulsed with energy, their organic hulls rippling as they prepared to fire. "All ships, prepare for battle," Jack ordered. "Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth, we are fighting for the idea that some things are worth dying for. We are fighting for the right to be free, to choose our own path, to live as humans and not as slaves." The first enemy shots lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. The Liberty shook as the alien weapons found their mark, but the ship held together. Bobby Kane's modifications had made her tougher than she looked. "Return fire!" Jack shouted. "Show them what human weapons can do." Lieutenant Kate Miller at the weapons station pressed her controls, and the Liberty's railguns roared to life. The primitive human weapons had been modified with captured alien technology, powered by nuclear reactors that were running far beyond safe limits. It was dangerous, but it was working. "Direct hit on the lead cruiser?" Kate shouted with excitement. "Their shields are down." Around them, the other human ships were fighting with the same desperate courage. The Defiance was taking heavy damage, but still firing everything it had. The Valor was using its bulk to shield the smaller destroyers. The Hawk had somehow managed to get behind an alien ship and was tearing it apart with close-range weapons, but for every alien ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Zephyrians had the numbers, the technology, and the advantage. The human fleet was brave, but bravery alone might not be enough. "Sir, we are losing the Raven," reported Amy, her voice tight with grief. "Captain Brown is not responding." Jack watched as one of his destroyers exploded in a ball of fire. Good people, dead because they had chosen to fight rather than surrender. He felt the familiar weight of command, the knowledge that every decision he made would cost lives. "Keep fighting," he ordered. "Make every shot count. Make every sacrifice." The battle was just beginning, but Jack already knew how it would end. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But they were human, and humans did not give up. They would fight until the last ship was destroyed, until the last weapon was fired, until the last breath was taken, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The Liberty shuddered under another alien attack, and Jack gripped his captain's chair harder. This was his ship, his crew, his responsibility. Whatever happened next, he would face it standing up, fighting back, and never giving the enemy the satisfaction of seeing him break. The war for humanity's survival had come down to this moment. This battle, this final stand. And Jack Morrison was ready to make it count. The space around Earth's last fleet exploded into chaos as the Zephyrian ships opened fire with everything they had. Bright plasma beams cut through the darkness like deadly lightning, and the human vessels shook under the massive assault. The Liberty took 3 direct hits in the first few seconds, and Jack felt the deck plates vibrate under his feet as the ship's hull absorbed the punishment. "Damage report," Jack shouted over the noise of alarms and explosions. "Hull breach on deck." 7, Bobby Kane called back from his engineering station. "But the emergency seals are holding. We lost 2 gun turrets, but the main weapons are still online." Jack nodded and turned to his pilot. "Danny, get us out of their crosshairs. Use everything you learned in flight school, and then some." "Lieutenant." Danny Ross grinned and pushed the Liberty into a dive that should have been impossible for a ship that size. The massive vessel twisted and rolled like a fighter plane, dodging plasma blasts that would have destroyed smaller ships. Danny had been flying since he was 16, and now all those years of training were keeping them alive. "Kate, return fire," Jack ordered. "Target their lead ships. Make them pay attention to us." Weapons Officer Kate Miller had been waiting for this moment. Her modified railguns charged up with a sound like thunder as she fired a full spread at the nearest alien cruiser. The human projectiles were primitive compared to the enemy's energy weapons, but they had been upgraded with captured Zephyrian technology and powered by nuclear reactors that were running at dangerous levels. The railgun slugs hit the alien ship like hammers, punching through its bio-armor and causing internal explosions. The creature-machine hybrid writhed in pain and anger, its green lights flickering as it tried to repair itself. "Direct hit!" Kate shouted with fierce joy. That got their attention. Around them, the other human ships were fighting with the same desperate determination. The used Defiance had taken severe damage but was still firing everything it had. Captain Steve Adams had lost his main engines, but he was using his secondary thrusters to keep his ship in the fight. The Defiance spun slowly through space, its weapons blazing at any alien ship that came too close. The UES Valor was using its heavy armor to shield the smaller destroyers from the worst of the enemy fire. Captain Nancy Young had positioned her ship between the aliens and the more vulnerable vessels, taking hit after hit but refusing to back down. Her crew was working miracles to keep the ship running, patching holes and rerouting power even as more damage poured in. "Sir, the Hawk is in trouble," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from her communications station. "Captain Lee says they have lost half their weapons and their engines are failing." Jack watched as the small destroyer tried to limp away from 3 alien fighters that were closing in for the kill. The Hawk had been fast and deadly at the start of the battle, but now it was wounded and slow. The alien ships moved like predators, circling their prey and preparing to finish it off. "Danny, get us over there," Jack ordered. "We are not losing. Another ship if we can help it." The Liberty changed course, its massive bulk accelerating toward the trapped destroyer. The alien fighters saw them coming and turned to meet this new threat, their bioweapons charging up with deadly energy. "Kate, give me everything we have," Jack said. "Full power to forward guns." "Sir, if we do that, we might overload the reactors," Bobby Kane warned from his station. "The modifications were not designed for this kind of stress." "Then we better make it count," Jack replied. "Fire!" The Liberty's forward batteries erupted in a blaze of light and energy. The combined firepower of 6 railgun turrets, powered by nuclear reactors running far beyond safe limits, created a wall of destruction that tore through the alien fighters. 2 of them exploded immediately, their biohulls unable to withstand the massive kinetic impact. The 3rd one managed to dodge, but it was badly damaged and retreating. "Hawk is clear," Amy announced. "Captain Lee says thank you." But the victory came at a cost. The Liberty's forward power grid had overloaded, and sparks were flying from damaged control panels. The ship was still fighting, but it was hurt and getting weaker with each exchange of fire. "We cannot keep this up forever," Commander Lisa Parker said quietly, standing next to Jack's chair. "The aliens have too many ships, and we are taking too much damage." Jack knew she was right. They had destroyed 7 alien vessels, but the enemy still had over 100 ships left. The human fleet was down to 9 vessels, and all of them were damaged. It was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. "Sir, incoming message from Captain Adams," Amy reported. "He says the Defiance has lost life support and most of his crew is dead. He is asking for permission to ram the enemy command ship." Jack felt his heart sink. Steve Adams had been his friend for 15 years. They had served together on 3 different ships, and Steve had been the best man at Jack's wedding. Now he was asking permission to die. "Tell him to wait," Jack said. "We might have another option." But even as he said it, Jack knew they were running out of options. The alien fleet was closing in, and their weapons were getting more accurate. The Liberty took another hit, and this time the damage was serious. Half the lights went out and the artificial gravity flickered. "Sir, we just lost the main computer core," Bobby Kane reported. "I am switching to backup systems, but we are operating at half capacity." The battle was turning against them, but the human crews kept fighting. They fired their weapons until the barrels melted, flew their ships until the engines failed, and fought with a courage that amazed even themselves. Every human who died took at least 1 alien with them, and sometimes more. Lieutenant Danny Ross was pushing the Liberty through maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. He rolled and dove and twisted through space, dodging plasma blasts and energy torpedoes with skill that bordered on the impossible. His hands flew over the controls, and sweat poured down his face as he fought to keep them alive. "Danny, you are a crazy pilot," Kate Miller shouted as she fired another spread of railgun rounds. "But you are keeping us alive." "Just doing my job," Danny replied, pulling the ship into another impossible turn. though I think I'm going to need a vacation after this. The joke brought a few laughs from the bridge crew, but everyone knew the truth. They were not going home from this battle. They were going to die here in the cold darkness of space, far from the Earth they were trying to protect. "Sir, the Eagle is gone," Amy reported, her voice breaking. "Direct hit from an alien dreadnought, no survivors. Another ship lost, another crew of good people who would never see home again." Jack felt each death like a physical blow, but he could not let it stop him. He had to keep fighting, had to keep hoping, had to find a way to make their sacrifice mean something. "All ships, close formation," Jack ordered. "We make our stand here. Whatever happens, we make sure the aliens remember this day." The surviving human vessels moved closer together, their combined firepower creating overlapping fields of destruction. They were wounded and outnumbered, but they were still dangerous. The aliens would win, but they would pay a terrible price for their victory. The Liberty shuddered under another barrage, and Jack gripped his chair harder. This was it. This was humanity's last stand. And he was going to make sure it was a fight the galaxy would never forget. The battle had been raging for 2 hours when Dr. Helen Grant made a discovery that changed everything. While the Liberty shook under alien fire and the bridge crew fought to keep the ship alive, she was deep in the science lab, studying the enemy through damaged sensors and broken equipment. "Captain Morrison, you need to come down here right now," Helen called through the ship's communication system. Her voice was excited but also frightened, like someone who had found something they wished they had not. "I cannot leave the bridge right now, Helen," Jack replied as another explosion rocked the ship. "We are kind of busy up here." "Sir, this cannot wait," Helen insisted. "What I found changes everything about this war. The aliens are not what we thought they were." Jack looked at Commander Lisa Parker, who nodded and moved to take his place at the captain's chair. "Go," she said. "I will keep us alive while you are gone." Jack ran through the damaged corridors of the Liberty, dodging repair crews and stepping over debris from the battle. Emergency lights flickered overhead, and the smell of smoke and burned electronics filled the air. The ship was dying around him, but it was still fighting. He found Dr. Grant in the science lab, surrounded by computer screens showing strange patterns and energy readings. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but she was one of the smartest people Jack had ever met. If she said something was important, it was important. "What did you find?" Jack asked. Helen pointed to the largest screen, which showed a map of the alien fleet. But instead of individual ships, the display showed them connected by lines of energy, like a giant web stretched across space. "The Zephyrian ships are not independent," Helen explained. "They are all connected to some kind of network. Every ship talks to every other ship instantly, sharing information and coordinating attacks." Jack studied the display. It explained a lot about how the aliens fought. They moved like one giant organism instead of separate ships, each one knowing exactly what the others were doing. "That is why they are so good at working together," he said. "They are not just talking to each other, they are thinking together." "Exactly," Helen said, "but there is more. The network does not just connect the ships in this battle. It goes much further out, beyond our solar system. I think it connects to other alien fleets, maybe even to their homeworlds." She switched to another screen that showed energy patterns extending into deep space. The readings were faint, but they were there. Lines of communication stretching across the galaxy, connecting the Zephyrian fleet to something much larger. "This is how they conquered so many worlds," Helen continued. "Every battle they fight teaches the entire network. Every tactic we use, every weapon we fire, every move we make gets shared with all the other alien forces instantly." Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's failing life support. This meant that even if they somehow won this battle, the aliens would learn from it. The next human world they attacked would face enemies who knew exactly how to counter human tactics. "Is there any way to disrupt it?" Jack asked. Helen nodded slowly. "Maybe. I have been studying the network signals and I found something interesting. There is a delay of about 14 seconds between when something happens and when the network updates. It is not much, but it might be enough. Enough for what? To feed them false information, Helen said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. If we could hack into their network during that 14-second window, we could make them think we are doing one thing while we do something else. Jack began to understand. We could trick them into making mistakes. Better than that, Helen said. We could make them destroy each other. The network coordinates their attacks, but if we feed it wrong information, their own ships might fire on each other instead of us. It was a desperate plan, but it might work. The aliens were so dependent on their network that they had forgotten how to fight without it. If the network could be turned against them, even for a few minutes, it might give the human fleet the chance they needed. What do you need? Jack asked. Helen led him to another part of the lab where a strange device hummed with alien energy. It looked like a mixture of human technology and Zephyrian bio-components, connected by cables and wires that pulsed with light. This is a quantum communicator, Helen explained. We built it from parts we captured from alien ships. It can interface with their network, but the power requirements are enormous. How enormous? We would need to route the ship's entire main reactor through it. And the quantum field it generates would be lethal to anyone in the same room. Jack studied the device. It was their only hope, but it would mean certain death for whoever operated it. The quantum radiation would kill a human in minutes, maybe. Less, I will do it, Jack said immediately. Sir, you cannot, Helen protested. The radiation exposure would be fatal. Even with protective gear, you would not survive more than a few minutes. Then I better work fast, Jack replied. How long? Do we need to maintain the connection? At least 5 minutes to upload enough false data to confuse their network. Maybe 10 minutes to really mess them up. Jack did the math. 10 minutes of lethal radiation exposure. There was no way to survive it, but if it worked, it might save the remaining human ships and give Earth a fighting chance. Can you set it up? He asked. Helen nodded sadly. I already have. I was hoping we could find another way, but with the ship this damaged, we do not have any other options. An explosion somewhere in the ship shook the lab and the lights flickered. Through the hull, Jack could hear the sound of weapons fire and the screaming of stressed metal. The Liberty was taking a beating, and it could not last much longer. Sir, we need you back on the bridge, Lisa Parker's voice came through the communication system. The aliens are concentrating their fire on us. I do not think we can take much more. Jack looked at the quantum communicator one more time. It was their only chance, but it meant he would never see Earth again. He would never see the blue skies and green fields that he had spent 3 years fighting to protect. Helen, how long do you need to prepare the device? 10 minutes, she replied. Maybe 15 if we want to be sure it works. Get started, Jack ordered. And Helen, do not tell the crew what this will cost. They have enough to worry about. Jack ran back to the bridge where he found his crew fighting desperately to keep the ship alive. The Liberty had taken more damage, and half the control stations were dark. But his people were still at their posts, still fighting, still believing. In him, report, he said as he took his captain's chair back from Lisa. We lost the Valor 10 minutes ago, she said quietly. Captain Young went down with her ship. The Defiance is still fighting, but they are running out of ammunition. We are down to 6 ships, and all of them are badly damaged. Through the main view screen, Jack could see the alien fleet closing in. They had lost some ships, but they still outnumbered the humans 10-1. It was only a matter of time before they finished off the remaining human vessels. Sir, Captain Adams is asking again for permission to ram the alien command ship, Amy reported. He says his ship is too damaged to fight much longer. Jack thought about his old friend Steve, alone on a dying ship, wanting to make his death count for something. In 15 minutes, Jack would be making the same choice, but for now, he needed to keep his fleet alive. Tell him to hold position, Jack said. We might have one more card to play. He just hoped it would be enough. 15 minutes later, Jack Morrison walked through the dying corridors of the Liberty toward the science lab. The ship was barely holding together now. Sparks flew from broken panels, and the emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. The artificial gravity kept cutting out, making him float for a few seconds. Before slamming back down, he passed crew members working frantically to repair damaged systems. Some of them looked up and nodded as he went by. They did not know where he was going or what he was about to do. They just knew their captain was still fighting, still trying to find a way to win. In the science lab, Dr. Helen Grant had finished preparing the quantum communicator. The device hummed with alien energy, and strange blue light danced around its biomechanical components. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting human technology to captured Zephian systems in ways that should not have worked but somehow did. "It is ready," Helen said when Jack entered the room. "But sir, please reconsider. The radiation will kill you in minutes." "Maybe we can find another way." Jack shook his head. "There is no other way, and we both know it. The ship cannot take much more damage, and the aliens are closing in. This is our only chance." He looked at the quantum communicator one more time. It was an ugly thing, part machine and part living creature, pulsing with energy that hurt to look at directly. But it was their hope, their last hope. "How does it work?" Jack asked. Helen showed him the control panel, which was a mixture of human buttons and alien bio-interfaces that responded to touch. "You put your hands here, on these organic panels. The device will connect your mind to the alien network through quantum fields. Then you can feed false information into their system." "What kind of false information?" "Anything that will confuse them. Wrong ship positions, fake attack plans, false damage reports. The more chaos we can create in their network, the better chance our ships have." Jack studied the controls. They looked simple enough, but he knew that once he started, there would be no going back. The quantum radiation would begin killing him immediately. "Sir, there is something else you should know," Helen said quietly. "The quantum field does not just connect you to their network. It connects you to everything. All the alien fleets across the galaxy, all their homeworlds, maybe even things we do not understand yet." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that once you are connected, you might see things that no human has ever seen before. Learn things about the universe that we never imagined, but the cost will be your life." Jack thought about this. To see the galaxy through alien eyes, to understand their technology and their plans, would be invaluable for humanity's future, but it would mean his death. "How long do I have once I start?" "The radiation will begin affecting you immediately," Helen said. "You might have 10 minutes before it becomes too much to think clearly. 15 minutes at the most before your body shuts down completely. And how long do we need to disrupt their network?" "At least 5 minutes to cause confusion. 10 minutes would be better. 15 minutes might let us upload enough false data to turn their own weapons against them." Jack did the math again. If he could hold on for the full 15 minutes, he might save not just the remaining ships in this battle, but give Earth the information it needed to fight future alien attacks. The Liberty shook under another barrage of enemy fire. Through the lab's small window, Jack could see flashes of light as human and alien weapons exchanged fire. His people were still fighting, still dying, still believing that somehow they could win. "Sir, we need you back on the bridge, Commander." Lisa Parker's voice came through the communication system. "The Defiance is going down. Captain Adams says he cannot hold out much longer." Jack picked up the communicator and spoke to his bridge crew one last time. "Lisa, I need you to take command of the ship. There is something I have to do." "Sir, what are you talking about?" "We need you here. You can handle it," Jack said. "You have always been the best officer I have ever served with. Take care of the crew, and if we get through this, make sure Earth knows what we learned here." "Jack, you are scaring me." "What are you about to do?" Jack looked at Helen, who was checking the quantum communicator one final time. The device was ready, waiting for him to make the ultimate sacrifice. "I'm going to save as many of our people as I can," he said. "And I'm going to make sure the aliens never forget what happens when they mess with humanity." He cut the communication before Lisa could respond. She would understand later when she saw what happened to the alien fleet. For now, she had a ship to command and a battle to fight. "Are you ready?" Helen asked. Jack nodded and placed his hands on the bioorganic control panels. They felt warm and slightly wet, like living skin. The moment he made contact, he could feel the quantum field building around him. "Remember," Helen said, "you need to think like you are feeding information into a computer. Project thoughts about ship positions, attack plans, anything that will confuse their coordination." "I understand." Jack took a deep breath and activated the quantum communicator. Immediately, the world around him changed. The blue light from the device became blinding, and he could feel energy coursing through his body like liquid fire. The alien network opened up before his mind like a vast ocean of information. Suddenly, he was connected to every Zephyrian ship in the fleet. He could feel their thoughts, their plans, their confidence in victory. The aliens were so sure they would win that they had already begun planning the invasion of Earth, but now Jack was inside their network, and he began to feed them lies. He made them think the human ships were in different positions than they really were. He created fake damage reports that made the Liberty and other human vessels seem more hurt than they were. He uploaded false attack plans that would send alien ships into traps. The effect was immediate. Through the network, Jack could sense confusion spreading through the alien fleet. Ship commanders were receiving conflicting orders. Navigation systems were showing wrong positions. Weapons targeting computers were locking onto the wrong targets. On the bridge of the Liberty, Commander Lisa Parker watched in amazement as the alien fleet suddenly became disorganized. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began to spread out randomly. Some of them even started firing at each other, thinking they were shooting at human vessels. "What is happening to them?" Lieutenant Danny Ross asked as he watched alien ships collide with each other. "I do not know," Lisa replied, "but whatever it is, we need to take advantage of it. All ships, concentrate fire on the alien command vessel, now while they are confused." In the science lab, Jack felt the quantum radiation beginning to eat away at his body. His hands were shaking and he could taste blood in his mouth. But he held on, pouring more false information into the alien network. He showed them human reinforcements that did not exist. He made them think Earth had secret weapons that could destroy entire fleets. He created so much false data that the alien commanders did not know what to believe anymore, but the radiation was getting stronger. Jack could feel his vision starting to blur, and his thoughts were becoming harder to focus. The quantum field was changing him, transforming his body into something that was part human and part energy. Through the network, he began to see things that no human had ever seen before. Other alien races, other worlds, other wars happening across the galaxy. The Zephyrians were just one part of a vast galactic empire that had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. But he also saw something else, something that gave him hope. The empire was not as strong as it appeared. Other species had fought back and won. Humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and they were not the first to refuse surrender. Jack held on for 12 minutes before his body finally began to fail. But by then, he had uploaded enough false information to turn the alien fleet against itself. Through the quantum field, he watched as Zephyrian ships destroyed each other. Thinking they were fighting humans, the battle was turning, but Jack Morrison was dying. And in his final moments, he began to understand that death might not be the end of his fight. On the bridge of the Liberty, Commander Lisa Parker watched in amazement as the alien fleet tore itself apart. Zephyrian ships that had been working together perfectly were now firing on each other. The massive bio-cruisers twisted and writhed as their weapon systems targeted their own allies instead of the human vessels. "I do not believe what I am seeing," Lieutenant Danny Ross said from his pilot station. "They are destroying themselves. Whatever Jack is doing, it is working." Lisa replied, "All ships, focus fire on the alien command vessel. This is our chance." The remaining human ships, battered and barely functional, turned their weapons on the largest Zephyrian vessel. The alien commanders were so confused by the false information flooding their network that they could not coordinate a proper defense. The Liberty's railguns, along with fire from the Defiance and the other surviving ships, hammered the biocruiser until its organic hull split open like a rotten fruit. But Lisa was worried about Jack. He had been in the science lab for 15 minutes now, and she had not heard from him since the battle turned in their favor. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Amy, try to contact the captain. She ordered. Lieutenant Amy Carter tried several times to reach the science lab, but there was no response. The communication systems in that part of the ship might have been damaged, but Lisa had a terrible feeling that it was something worse. In the science lab, Dr. Helen Grant watched helplessly as Captain Jack Morrison slowly died in front of the quantum communicator. The radiation had been eating away at his body for 15 minutes, and now he was barely breathing. His skin had turned pale and gray, and blood was running from his nose and mouth, but something strange was happening. Instead of simply dying from radiation poisoning, Jack seemed to be changing. The quantum field around him was growing brighter, and his body was becoming translucent, like he was turning into pure energy. "Jack, can you hear me?" Helen asked, but he did not respond. His eyes were open, but they were glowing with the same blue light as the quantum communicator through the alien network. Jack was experiencing something that no human had ever experienced before. His consciousness was expanding beyond his dying body, connecting not just to the Zephyrian fleet but to the entire galactic communication network that linked hundreds of alien species. Across thousands of worlds, he could see the whole galaxy spread out before him like a vast map of lights. Each star system was connected to others by streams of quantum energy, creating a web of communication that spanned millions of light years. The Zephyrians were just one small part of this network, and now Jack was becoming part of it too, but he was not losing his humanity. Instead, he was bringing human thoughts and human values into a system that had never experienced them before. The aliens in the network had conquered and destroyed for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to fight for something other than power. Jack began to understand that the galactic empire was not as united as it appeared. Many of the alien species had been forced to join the network against their will. They were slaves, just like the Zephyrians wanted to make humanity. But they had never seen a species like humans before, a species that would rather die than surrender. Through the quantum field, Jack started to send a different kind of message to the galaxy. Not false information to confuse enemies, but true information about what humanity represented. He showed them Earth with its blue oceans and green forests. He showed them human cities, human art, human music. He showed them what it meant to be free. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the galaxy, enslaved species began to receive Jack's messages. They saw humans fighting impossible odds and refusing to give up. They saw Earth's defenders choosing death over slavery. And for the first time in thousands of years, they began to remember what freedom felt like. On the bridge of the Liberty, the crew watched as something incredible happened to the Zephyrian fleet. The alien ships stopped fighting entirely. They hung motionless in space, their green lights flickering as their biocomputers struggled to process the flood of new information Jack was feeding into their network. "Sir, the aliens are powering down their weapons," reported Lieutenant Kate Miller from her weapons station. "All of them. The entire fleet is going dark. Are they surrendering?" Lisa asked. "I do not think so," Amy replied, studying her communication screens. "I am picking up massive data transfers throughout their fleet. It looks like their entire network is being rewritten." In the science lab, Jack felt his physical body finally failing. The radiation had done too much damage, and his heart was starting to stop. But his mind was stronger than ever, expanded across the quantum network and touching alien consciousnesses. Throughout the galaxy, he could feel the Zephyrian ships around Earth struggling with the new information he was giving them. Their biocomputers, designed only for conquest and destruction, were trying to process concepts like freedom, sacrifice, and hope. Some of the ships were shutting down completely, unable to handle the contradiction between their programming and the human values Jack was showing them. "Helen," Jack whispered, his voice barely audible, "tell Lisa that the network goes both ways. The aliens can see us, but now we can see them too. Tell Earth to look for the signals. Tell them that humanity is not alone in wanting to be free. Doctor. Grant leaned closer to hear his fading words. Jack, what is happening to you? I am not dying, he said, and his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, not just from his body. I am becoming something new. Part human, part alien, part pure energy. I can guide humanity to the stars, show them what is really out there. The quantum field around Jack pulsed brighter, and suddenly his physical body dissolved completely into light. But his consciousness remained, stronger and clearer than ever, existing as pure information within the galactic network. Helen stared at the empty space where Jack had been standing. The quantum communicator was still running, but now it was powered by something other than the ship's reactor. It was powered by Jack himself, transformed into a being of quantum energy that could exist anywhere in the galaxy instantly. On the bridge, Lisa felt tears running down her face as she realized what had happened to her captain and friend. Jack, she called out over the communication system. I am here, Lisa, came a voice that sounded like Jack, but also like something more than human. I am everywhere now. The battle is over. The aliens are retreating, but this is just the beginning. Through the main view screen, the crew watched as the Zephyrian fleet began to withdraw. But they were not leaving in defeat. They were leaving in confusion, their entire understanding of the universe changed by contact with human consciousness. What happens now? Lisa asked. Now humanity takes its place among the stars, Jack's voice replied. I can see the paths between worlds, the safe routes through space, the locations of other species that want to be free. I can guide our ships to new worlds and warn them of dangers. My last fight as a human has become my first mission as something more. Over the following months, Earth scientists detected strange signals from deep space. Messages that seemed to come from Jack Morrison himself, now existing as a bridge between human and alien consciousness. He had vanished into the stars, but he had not abandoned humanity. Instead, he had become their guide to a larger universe. The war with the Zephyrians was over, but Jack's greatest adventure was just beginning. Somewhere in the quantum realm between stars, a human consciousness explored the mysteries of the galaxy, preparing the way for his species to join the cosmic community as equals rather than slaves. Jack Morrison had made his last stand as a human. But his first steps as a guardian of humanity's future among the infinite stars had only just begun.